Don't you see? He's got us now. Okay, this is exactly what he wants. We can't go to the police, not now. He's made sure of that. He's just out there and he's watching us and waiting. What are you waiting for, huh? What are you waiting for?
A year after a deadly hit and run, four friends are stalked by a killer. Special guest Mike Kahn returns to the show to discuss our long-lost brother, TV shows to watch on the elliptical, and the trashier version of Maxim. Then we find out if I Know What You Did Last Summer stands the test of time.
Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? James says gladiator with a glut. Alan says as a father, blah blah. It's the test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today?
Hello everyone and welcome to a special episode of The Test of Time. We're joined with a guest, but first I'm James Brief and this is my buddy and pal, the director of these podcasts, Alan Noah. How are you doing, Al?
I am doing very well, thank you, James. And yes, we are joined by a very special guest. Joining us for the fourth time is Mike Kahn. Mike, welcome back to the show.
Good to be back. It's an honor as always.
Well, I'm glad to have you back. We were trying to get you back for a while. The scheduling was difficult, but you are here for the first of three spooktacular Spooktober episodes that we are doing for Halloween throughout October. We're doing three scary movies. We're going to do one from the 90s, then one from the 80s, and one from the 70s. Why are we counting backwards? Because we got you here tonight. That's why.
And a little secret, I know what you did last summer.
Dun, dun, dun. Well, what did you do last summer, Mike? I don't think I've seen you since the summer. What were you up to this summer?
I relaxed. My kids were in camp. One of them was in sleepaway camp. No activities, no sports, no birthday parties. It was fucking amazing.
That sounds very, very nice.
As a father, I know you do think so.
Yeah. My son Eli was playing baseball throughout the summer, so we did not get that break that you're talking about, and I am a little jealous.
My son Eli was in sleepaway camp. I had a big break from him.
Oh, okay. All right. Yes, and it is funny that we both have sons named Eli. And James, I know what you did last summer because we were hanging out all summer and you were telling me all of the things you did over the summer.
I was here and I went to camp.
Exactly.
James got sent to sleepaway camp for 1 week or two?
2 weeks. Two
Very
wonderful
nice.
weeks.
I want to get sent to sleepaway camp.
You should go with James.
Can we do that?
Yeah, come to sleepaway camp.
Oh my God, that would be the best.
Sleepaway camps, I mean, I'm the camp doctor. I think they need a camp lawyer, on retainer, at the camp.
Oh my
all
God,
summer.
then we're set.
Yeah, you're set. Absolutely.
Done.
But tell me why you wanted to come back on the podcast to talk about I Know What You Did Last Summer. Why was this the movie that you picked?
Well, we talked about Boiler Room. And how I lived that.
Right.
And, well, this one, I didn't live.
Oh, I thought there was going to be a dramatic reveal again. I would have been really impressed. Well, me and my friends, we killed the guy once. And if you had a story like that, that would have been pretty shocking.
No, it's a fun movie. I thought that this was more of a summer movie, and turns out if it's more of a Halloween type movie. But it was a fun ride back in 98, and it was a fun ride in 2023.
Originally, we were thinking about doing it in the summer, and it would have worked as a summer movie. It takes place over 4th of July weekend, mostly. I think it works as a Halloween time movie. Whatever, it's fine.
Whatever gets us together.
Exactly.
We reviewed the Scream, 1996's Scream, and it really is kind of the one of the first horror films of kind of the modern era because of what it represented. It basically was not a parody or a spoof, but it basically based all those 80s supernatural, Freddy and Jason and Michael Myers, and kind of put them all together and put them in one new movie. And the thing about Scream was that it mostly starred young, attractive teenagers, and it was incredibly popular for our age, and we were the exact demographic when Scream came out. And that led to a lot of, I wouldn't say copycat films, but films like this, actually. Jennifer Love Hewitt, she was not the first cast as Julie James. I don't know if you read about that, but this is a Nickelodeon and TGIF star. There's only one of them.
Melissa Joan Hart?
Correct, yeah,
Ooh.
Melissa Joan Hart. And she specifically turned down the role of Julie James because, a quote from IMDb that I read is, it looks like another ripoff of Scream. Another ripoff of Scream. So even she's acknowledging that everyone in Hollywood was probably trying to make these. And if you remember, every poster was exactly the same. It was kind of the profile shots and the main stars in the front, which was interesting about Scream because Drew Barrymore was in the front. But after that, it was always whoever survives is in the front, and whoever's like the small picture, they're totally dead. Other films like Urban Legends came out, and The Faculty, Disturbing Behavior.
Blair Witch.
And Blair Witch I'll give a little bit, that was a little different, but just because it wasn't like exactly
The way
like
they were
trying to
shot
make
was different,
this.
yeah.
Yeah, but a lot of these kind of slasher, and then they one by one get knocked off, and it was just the same formula over and over. And it worked for a while. Just like when one 3D film works, they made so many 3D films. But I remember this film being one of the first ones because I saw this in the theater actually. I think I did. Maybe I didn't see it in the theater, but I definitely saw it then on a break from college when we were renting something at Blockbuster, because I saw that. I've not seen this film in almost 25 years, but I've seen this exactly once before, and I think right when it came out.
Did you see it when it first came out, Mike?
I saw this, I think a year or so later. Like, I'd heard about this from a couple friends, and I, like James, got it from Blockbuster and made it Blockbuster night.
What about you, Al? When did you first see this? Was this the first time you saw this movie?
No, I definitely saw it before. I thought that I saw it in the theater maybe over Thanksgiving break or something. I don't know. But I did just want to say, when you were talking about the connection with Scream, Kevin Williamson wrote Scream, and he wrote I Know What You Did Last Summer. He wrote I Know What You Did Last Summer first, but it just kind of sat on the shelf and no one was interested in making a horror movie until Scream did really well. And then they fast-tracked his other movie that, was written previously. So,
and do you know what else was huge for him in 1997?
Dawson's Creek.
Yep. I don't know if you remember, but there was almost like a trope of Kevin Williamson kind of screenplay, because it was kind of a thing that these like 16-year-olds were talking like a very well-educated and very erudite 30-year-old. And Pacey and Dawson, and they talked like, what do you think the ramifications of what we're doing are? And yeah, no one talked like they did.
A lot more intelligent than us.
That's a Kevin Williamson style.
Right. So let's recap I Know What You Did Last Summer for anyone who doesn't remember it. It's a horror film about 4 high school graduates who accidentally run over a pedestrian after a night of partying. They panic and dump the body in the ocean, vowing to keep what they did a secret. 1 year later, they return to their small town, but nothing is the same, as all 4 are traumatized by what occurred that night. Julie, played by Jennifer Love Hewitt, receives a frightening letter that says, I know what you did last summer. Just like the title of the movie. Get it? Get it? Mm-hmm. Then she and her friends are stalked by a raincoat-wearing, hook-wielding killer. Barry and beauty queen Helen are killed, so it's up to Julie and her ex-boyfriend Ray to find out who is following them before it's too late. So I don't need to ask you if this was a hit, because it was a hit because there was a sequel.
This film was number 1 at the box office for 3 weeks in a row, opening at $15.5 million, made $72 million $72 million in the USA, and $126 million worldwide. This was a huge film. Yeah, it spawned a sequel and then tons of copycats.
An Amazon series that aired a year ago?
One season, then they killed it.
Right. I don't know if they completed their story or if it ended on a cliffhanger. I didn't watch it.
Didn't watch it, didn't even know it was out there. But I've heard that they are going to come out with another sequel with Jennifer Love Hewitt and Freddie Prinze Jr.
Sure, because why not?
Gotta make money somehow.
Oh, geez.
Why not? I mean, it's a nostalgia cash cow. But Kevin Williamson, he had three stellar cast. You had Dawson's Creek, which made Michelle Williams, a huge A-list star. And of course, Katie Holmes became big. And Scream, of course, launched a bunch of careers. And you probably would never heard of Neve Campbell if it wasn't for that film.
Was she Party 5 before or after?
She was Party 5 before. Yeah, Scott Wolf, is that his name?
He was also Party 5, yeah. Fun fact, he was Nate Pylam.
Okay, so he is our brother.
He is our brother.
How about that?
That's right. So this film, this had, of course, Jennifer Love Hewitt, and she's still doing films. Oh, she did films for a while. She also had a very successful television career. She was on that show Ghost Whisperer for like 6 or 7 years. It's one of those shows that none of us watched, but if you're on a CBS show for 6 years, you made bank. That's a network show in like the early 2000s. Sarah Michelle Gellar became huge, and she also became the horror queen. She was on Buffy. That's not really horror, more horror comedy, but she was in a very big film, The Grudge. That was quite big a few years later.
And Scream 2.
And Scream 2, right? Freddie Prinze Jr., he was huge for like a year or two. There really was a Freddie Prinze Jr. moment where I think after She's All That, the studio must have given him like a 4-picture deal. He also, of course, married. Do you know who he married?
Well, yeah, Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Of course. And they're still happily married today.
Right, and they met on the set of I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Aww.
Yes.
Johnny Galecki, he's Max in this film, and it's amazing. If we watched it 20 years ago, I guarantee we would say, the guy from Roseanne. And today, any person under 30 would say, oh, the guy from The The Big Bang Theory. The Big Bang Theory wasn't the best show, but I think he's very good at it. He's been in a lot of dramas that I've seen. He's quite a good actor. I like him.
I don't think I've ever seen him in anything where I've been impressed by him, but then I've only seen him in Roseanne and Big Bang Theory, which I've watched 2 episodes of in my life, and this movie.
You've watched only 2 episodes of Big Bang?
Maybe it's only 1.5.
How?
Because it was garbage?
Really?
Yeah.
I thought that would be like such a you show.
Really? Why? I'm a little offended.
I kind of felt like you like those kinds of comedies.
No. I'm not really into standard sitcoms.
Whoa. Okay.
You
like more highbrow stuff.
It doesn't have to be highbrow, but there are a handful of sitcoms that I've watched over the past 10, 20 years. The ones that everyone liked, The Office and 30 Rock and Parks and Rec. Modern Family I was into, but a lot of network sitcoms I just couldn't get into.
Wow. I never watched it like when it was out on CBS, but for some reason, like without fail, it's always on when I go to the gym. It's always on like TBS, TNT, and if I'm on the elliptical, there's a decent chance that that's what I'm watching, either that or Friends.
I had a coworker who once said something very similar like that. I'm like, oh, you must love The Big Bang Theory. And I was like, no, I hate it. And he was very shocked. And when I was like, no, that's crap. And he was like, oh, it's so good. I was like,
he thought of you as an enormous nerd and then assumed that you would like the nerd show.
And see, that I understand. But then he, who is also a writer, said, that show is so well written. And I was like, come on. No, it's not.
Well, I mean, it's very, very trendy to shit on The Big Bang Theory.
Are you saying that I don't like The Big Bang Theory because I'm just trying to be trendy?
No, I'm just saying in general. I'm not saying that's, but it is very trendy to hate on The Big Bang Theory.
Oh, I wasn't doing it to be trendy. I just thought it was a crappy show.
Something like that, something like Friends. It's like you can kind of like be in it and out of it and just have it on in front of you and not really care. And sometimes you need those shows that like you don't really need to focus on that much. Like Game of Thrones is hard to watch like hour after hour after hour of that. Absolutely. And you certainly can't do that if you're like killing yourself on the elliptical for an hour.
Yeah, it's mindless. It's mindless comedy. It's not highbrow. It occasionally has funny stuff, and it's got a spectacular cast. I think that cast is excellent. But the other cast member that I had no idea was in this film was also Anne Heche. Mm-hmm. She basically plays a crazy woman for a couple minutes in the film.
She's in 2 scenes.
Yeah, she's in 2 scenes.
Okay, so you saw this movie shortly after it came out. Were you really into horror movies? Were you just really into this movie? Like, what was
into Jennifer Love Hewitt and Sarah Michelle Gellar, like every red-blooded guy our age.
All right.
Not gonna lie.
Fair enough. I forget when Jennifer Love Hewitt was on the cover of Maxim. It had to be somewhere around this time.
We were in college, I remember that much. Probably sophomore year, maybe junior.
Yeah. And I think back then being on the cover of Maxim was a big deal, at least to us, I guess. Like guys our age.
And also, that's how Donald Trump found his wife. Melania.
No shit.
Melania Krause. She was on the cover of FHM, which was like...
That makes more sense.
That was like the lower tier, Maxim being the higher tier of those very highbrow
The trashier British cousin.
Exactly. I do like that it's a mix. I thought at first that they were going to be all privileged kids, but it's a mixture of the privileged kids, Ryan Felipe and Sarah Michelle Gellar. They're definitely the rich ones, and Freddie Prinze Jr. is definitely he's the blue collar guy, and Jennifer Love Hewitt is, I guess, just regular middle class. But the four of them, they're partying together, and one of them, they were drinking, so Freddie Prinze Jr., he decides to drive, and he's distracted by one of the drunk guys, and there's a guy that walks in the middle of the street, and they hit him. They basically panic because they think they'll be pinned for it, and then they throw the guy in the ocean. And I'm not going to say it's unrealistic, because they are teens, they are stupid, all of them but Freddie Prinze Jr. are drunk. They should just have gone to the police. I don't think they would have gotten in any trouble. I mean, a little trouble, but also realistically knowing that, like, Ryan Felipe and Sarah Michelle Gellar as, like, literally the rich town beauty queen girl and, like, the guy in the huge mansion. This was an accident. Just knowing the legal system, I think it rightfully would have gone for these kids had they gone to the police. Kids will say stupid things. They'll never believe it wasn't me driving my car. That's what Ryan Philippe's character says. And he was drunk. So at least there's plausible there. But I was just kind of thinking, like, until you, like, threw the guy into the ocean, you guys still could have called. And I think Jennifer Love Hewitt's character even does say that. Yeah. She's like, we could still call the police, guys. And I did give it credit for that. But it was just kind of one of those, none of this had to happen. It's not a plot hole. I think it's actually more realistic that these teenagers would panic, but none of this had to happen.
It also didn't have to happen if they called an Uber,
Right. Well, if they called an Uber, then Freddie Prinze Jr. could have just said, hey, I can just invest in this thing and I won't be a poor guy anymore. Mm-hmm. It's also 1997. How does everyone have smartphones?
Damn it.
What the hell is a smartphone? Wait, we don't even have flip phones yet. What the hell's a flip phone? And then, the whole movie wouldn't make any sense in 1997.
It seemed like a good idea at the time.
Yeah.
Well, I think you bring up an interesting point, James, because these characters are supposed to be kids that you're rooting for. And I think the idea is, well, they made a terrible mistake, and does that mean that their lives should be ruined because they made this one mistake and they made some poor decisions in the aftermath? But to your point, it's so obvious what the right thing is to do, and I kind of don't like most of the characters after that scene, especially what's Ryan Felipe's character's name? Barry, right? I really hate Barry because he is so adamant about not calling the police. He grabs Julie, the Jennifer Love Hewitt character, by the neck. He's holding her by the neck, slams her on the car. It's like, you're not going to call the police. You never will. And I thought, okay, well then Barry's the bad guy and we hate him and he's going to die first and we're going to be happy about it. But the way the movie kind of positions him, he's still one of the quote unquote good guys. And I really just had a hard time rooting for him or hoping that he would be okay.
I don't think you're supposed to root for him. I mean, there was a chance for redemption. I think all of these kids could have had redemption. I mean, Barry says something that at least makes logical sense. It doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. But he says when they think this guy's dead, they say, he's dead anyway. If they pin it on us, we're dead too. So with that logic, they figure, okay, let's get rid of the body. But when they get to the pier, that guy is fucking alive. And those, all four of them, are murderers, or attempted murderers as it was. And at the end of the film, you find out he was a bad guy, he was a murderer anyway. So they were like, Freddie Prinze Jr. says something like, or Julie says, I couldn't live with that guilt for a whole year. Like, No, you should still feel guilty. You kicked a person. You had no idea that he was a murderer at the time, and you still killed him or tried to kill him or didn't call the police and try to rescue him. I agree with you, Al. None of these four people are good. Maybe arguably Ray, because he seemed to have felt guilty, Freddie Prinze Jr., as we find out over the year, but none of these other people tried to do any redemption.
You know what? I actually disagree a little bit. First thing, obviously, going and calling the police, as you'd pointed out, they didn't have flip phones. They didn't have smartphones. Calling the police was a little bit harder back then than it is now. But going beyond that also, Julie didn't want any part of that. Julie was in a position where she could call the police, and she was the one who, throughout college, her year of college, wound up coming out with some pretty serious PTSD.
That's fair. That's a fair point.
So you want to draw the line between her character and Helen, or for that matter, obviously Barry. Absolutely.
Right. Helen is willing to push that body in.
I think Ray was kind of willing to do it, or willing enough to do it. But obviously, yeah, Barry was the ringleader.
Well, yeah, you're right. Helen was only willing to push what she thought was a dead body into the water. When it grabbed her ankle, it was Ray that kicks him into the water. I don't think Helen was hugely protesting it either.
No.
But also, I think that the argument for dumping the body, maybe you could say that makes sense up until the other car comes down the road. And then when they see Max, that's when you gotta just throw out the whole getting rid of the corpse idea, because now someone else is there. Now someone can place you at the scene. At that point, yeah, even though you don't have a cell phone, you say, look, Max, this is what happened. You go into town and notify the police. We'll stay here. And then, of course, then they realize that the guy's not dead. And then the whole movie is not a movie anymore because they did the right thing. But that's the first turning point, even before they get to the pier and then, you know, the guy springs to life. That's when you say, okay, well, maybe we could have dumped the body, but no, there's another car here. So much for that.
So are you saying that you're a mentor, you just don't want to get caught?
No, I'm just saying that, like, I understand the point of view of let's get rid of it. The second those headlights come around the bend, I feel like then that idea is just gone, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, but again, I agree with you. That was what they should have done. I think these kids were stupid teenagers, which is what, you know, teenagers can be.
Right, but then I think, you know, we're talking about this movie in the same context as Scream because, you know, of the proximity to when they were released and Kevin Williamson and the young cast and all of that. In Scream, the Neve Campbell character, she is a victim. Pure and simple. I'm not saying she's perfect, but she is a victim who is terrorized, and it's very easy to root for her and hope she gets out okay because she didn't deserve this shit that is happening to her. Whereas in this movie, it's different. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm just saying, for me personally, I was less invested in these characters, and golly gee, I hope they all survive, because I don't really care about them. And then the first guy who is killed by the hookman, boogeyman in the slicker is Max, and that doesn't make any fucking sense because Max wasn't involved in the murder or the covering up of the corpse, and that kill was only added later in reshoots because they needed to amp up the stakes and amp up the tension. But God, it sure feels like it was a late addition because it just doesn't make any logical sense.
I think all they had to do was make Max one of their friends. I just think if Max was one of their friends, we would have cared more. Like, I mean, I cared actually because poor Max, like, the poor guy was treated like shit. He's treated as the poor guy when, dude, your friend Ray he's the fisherman next to you. He's like, you know, he's a working class guy. Why are you making fun of these guys? It doesn't mean as much because they were so mean to him the whole time. Then this guy dies. I feel bad for Max, but it just didn't make sense. I agree with you, Al. When you said it was a reshoot, like, I'm like, yeah, that feels like it was added in because there's only 4 guys to kill. They decide they want to keep 2 of them alive for a sequel. So, you know, you're going to kill the 2 of them, but it's going to take a while to kill 2 of them. So I think they added a 3rd kill count.
To me, it just seemed like, okay, killer needs a little practice. And I didn't really get into the heavy analysis as to how or why that was written in there. I'm just like, all right, got to kill somebody first, so why not him?
Well, the reason they did do him, and this is what I read, and I wish it was actually done a little better, was that the killer is now trying to track down all the people that he feels is responsible for running him over. It makes sense, good motive. And apparently there's a part where Ray is talking to Max in his truck and is like, fuck you, you saw us and you're not going to say anything. And there's maybe something in the background where the hook guy is there and therefore sees Max talking to Ray and thinks Max is part of this group. Had that been made more clear, I would have thought, oh, poor guy's just in wrong place, wrong time, and he's kind of put into this conspiracy when he shouldn't be. And it could be somewhat clever, but I agree, it's just kind of written in. Like, the poor guy is literally just hammering some crabs in a crab shack, and then he gets the hook to under the jaw. It's like, what the fuck?
You said Ray, I think you mean Barry.
Barry, yeah. So Ray is our Freddie Prinze Jr.
Yes, I read that thing too about that's why it kind of makes sense if you know that fact that, the killer was watching. But even that is still bullshit because he kills Max instantly. He attacks Barry but doesn't kill him.
Right.
He breaks into Helen's room and cuts her hair and leaves the threatening note but doesn't kill her.
Right.
And he's taunting them and he's playing with them.
Not Max.
Why? Right. Why does he want them to live and he kills Max right away? Also, why does he want them to live at all? Why is he fucking with these people and psychologically torturing them? To what end? Like, the whole motive of the killer is really, really murky. And it's a trope where the killer at the end of the movie has a monologue and explains his motivation, and he gives you the whole reason for everything that happened before, and that can be eye-roll worthy, but this movie really doesn't do anything resembling that, and it really needs it. It needs some explanation as to why this guy was targeting them, why he waited a whole year, why he was messing with them before he killed them, why he killed Max, why he was doing all of these things. And I found it to be really just confusing and a missed opportunity. Did that bother you, Mike?
Honestly, I tried just to not overthink it too much. He was lying in wait. And if you're going to kill somebody who did something really, really, really bad to you, make it a little more painful.
Yeah, I do agree with that, Mike. I'll even say I sympathize with that guy. He did not deserve to let him be killed or jailed by a court of law, not by these 14s on a road one night. But that 45 minutes between him being on the side of the road and deciding what to do, lifting him up, getting him in the trunk, the poor guy in a dark trunk, then put on a dock. The guy was alive. I don't think he was pretending the whole time. I think he was in agony and a horrible, horrible pain. And I agree with you, Al. This is Kevin Williamson, who had an amazing, the killers reveal their entire motivation at the end of Scream. And it's like, oh, wow, I totally didn't think you guys were trying to take the 80s horror movies and say that possessed you to kill. That was so cool. And nothing. They don't have the killer saying anything like that. You're a horrible person, Julie James. You think you're good. And some showdown between the two of them. It's really nothing. They do deserve to suffer. But I wish the killer said that. That's why they were trying to make him suffer.
But maybe part of the reason why they didn't do that was because they didn't want to make this a carbon copy of Scream.
Possibly.
And obviously, yeah, you're in the same genre, but two very different movies.
That's true.
Scream was, again, a lot more of a parody of these prior movies.
Yeah.
And this was kind of its own thing that stood on its own. And it was just kind of, to me at least, an hour and a half fun ride.
Yes, but the thing that they both have in common is that while they're also horror slasher movies, they're also kind of whodunits, right? It's a murder mystery. Who is the person behind the mask? That is true in Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer. And while the characters are trying to suss it out, there's red herrings, and then, we think it's the boyfriend, but it's not really the boyfriend, and we think this person is suspicious, and they're not, and all of that's fine. But at the end of Scream, this is why this guy did what he did. At the end of this movie, it's really, really not clear. So what happened is the guy who they thought that they killed, Anne Heche's brother, he killed his girlfriend in a drunk driving accident the year before. And so the hook man is that girl's dad. He killed his daughter's boyfriend and then disposed of the body. And that's the body that they found, but it wasn't who the four people hit. it was him. Like, all of this is murky, it's confusing, and again, a missed opportunity, because if the theme of this movie is the past comes back, you can't outrun your sins. Well, this guy also has sins. This guy also killed somebody, and a year later, he suffered consequences. There could be some parallels. That could be really interesting. And all of that is just, meh, whatever. We're not going to deal with any of that. And I feel like, why? That could have been interesting. Or the hell with all of that shit and just say, these kids left this guy for fucking dead and he's super pissed. All right, I understand that, but then play up that he's going for revenge and he wants to make him suffer and all of these horrible things, but they don't really do much with that either. It's a good motivation for him to want to go after these kids, but I don't know, it just feels empty, it feels hollow. It also feels a little bit creepy because he's maybe a 45-year-old going after these 17, 18-year-old kids, which just kind of makes it a little creepier too. I don't know. I felt like the whole villain thing really needed a rewrite.
I agree with you. I think the villain should have been better. One part I really did not like very much was there's a scare in the film where Julie opens her trunk and it's full of crabs and ice and Max. He's dead in there. And she screams. I thought it was a pretty good effect. The crab crawls out of Max's mouth. It was well done. And she runs inside, tells the other two, Sarah Michelle Gellar and the Freddie Prinze Jr., Ryan Philippe, I don't know, come outside. And when they come outside, it's gotta be a minute or two later, the trunk is empty and bone dry. And
that was weird, yeah.
The thing I like about something like Scream is there's no supernatural. This is not Freddy. This is not Jason. That was a little silly.
That was weird, yeah, I agree.
Unless the twist was going to be like Scream, there's a whole crew of people, then maybe. But for that one guy to do that perfectly, I was annoyed by that one. I know like that.
Also, the fact that when she goes to look in the trunk, she has to open the trunk of her car with a key. Just from a test of time perspective, that kind of made me laugh.
Oh, that's right.
That's how you used to have to open your trunk. You'd have to walk over and take the key and put it in. And now there's just a button for that.
I feel like my car in high school, I actually did have a handle I could pull up as opposed to a key to open it.
Okay.
But, no, I get it.
Also, right after that scene, that is maybe the movie's most famous moment when Jennifer Love Hewitt is screaming into the air, "Where are you? Come out here!" I read this trivia, maybe you did too, James, that scene was directed by a kid or something. I read it like 3 times and I don't understand what the fuck I read. Did you get that?
No, but what you're thinking of is, what are you waiting for? That's what she just holds her arms out and she's screaming out for the killer because he keeps taunting them and she's waiting. Why don't you just kill us? That was the clip from the trailer, and I have no idea that it was directed by a kid. That's really funny.
It was something very, very bizarre that like some kid won a contest or something and he got to direct one moment. Mike, did you read that?
No, it's so weird.
Yeah, I don't really know what the fuck that is, and maybe that's just something some idiot put on IMDb and made it up because that just seems like a really weird contest that a kid would get to direct one scene from a horror movie. I'm going to say that that's probably a bullshit story.
You know what else was a little bullshit, a little test of time and a little bullshit? When they're going to go into Anne Heche's house and like, we'll just wing it. And Julie says, Angela Lansbury always had a plan. And they're referring, of course, to Murder, She Wrote.
Uh-huh.
But I also don't think in 1997... an 18-year-old is referencing Murder, She Wrote.
Somebody on our age now, that show is too old for us.
Yeah, exactly. That was the old person show. That would be like if her response is, well, I don't know, how would Matlock handle this? Like, it was on TV in the 90s, but like, not for us.
Well, right around then, they also say when Jodie Foster did this, there was a psycho killer. So that's a Silence of the Lambs reference. That one, I think, is an appropriate reference that a teenager might make in 1997.
More or less, yeah.
Like that one works, and then they go into the house, and they're like, okay, my friend Angela. Yes, Jodie. All right. But I'm with you. The Angela Lansbury one was far less timely than the Jodie Foster one.
Did you guys think that this boat was enormous? That Julie kept, when the hook guy was chasing her, she kept going from room to an ice room to a hidden hallway, and like there are a lot of hidden stuff underneath the surface in this boat.
Was this his boat?
I think, yeah, it was the fisherman's boat, because fishermen's boats always have a lot of ice in there so that they could preserve the fish.
Or people.
And, or in this case, the people. And so I guess he's been murdering, like, a ton of people? Or was that Sarah Michelle Gellar and
I think it was
Ryan
supposed to be,
okay.
Helen
I guess
Berry.
it was that and Max's body.
And it is his boat because then at the end, you do see that the name of the boat was Precious Susie or Beautiful Susie or something, which was the name of his daughter. Something like that. So yes, that was his boat.
But if he's a fisherman, can't he just dump them out like 30 miles off the Atlantic? Like, 100 miles off the Atlantic?
But
like,
then we wouldn't get the effect for the movie, James.
Well, I guess you had to find the bodies, yeah.
Yes.
All right, that's why it was done.
Yeah, and also then Julie never sees him in the slicker outfit because at that point he's just in regular person clothes. So she doesn't get scared by him in his full outfit. Which isn't really a big deal, but it's just kind of funny. In this kind of movie, you would expect that the main heroine would be taunted and scared by the guy in his quote-unquote famous outfit. Also, it's not a particularly scary outfit. It's just like, what was the cough drops? Was it Gordon's? The Gordon's Fisherman? Am I getting that name wrong?
Well, there was the Gordon's Fisherman, but I don't know.
No, that's a fish sticks.
Yeah, that is fish sticks.
Fish sticks.
Trust the Gordon's Fisherman.
Well, the Islanders with the fish sticks, those were pretty scary at the time.
Okay, fine. Again, with the Scream comparison, that ghost face mask, that's pretty scary. This guy who's just wearing a raincoat and a big hat, like, that's not scary.
I think the hook is scary. I think it's generically scary. I don't think it's terrifying. The hook is good, but yeah, I wish there was just something a little more scary about the guy.
I think they were trying to avoid being over the top and overly comical. Like, they didn't want the hockey mask. They didn't want the burned face. They didn't want the stupid mask. Was it as good as it could have been? No, but I think they were trying to avoid all the like really stupid tropes. And that's how they wind up settling on this. Okay. And then the other thing is that kind of led to that scene at the parade when you had like a few people who looked like it could have been them, but then it clearly wasn't. Like the one Freddie Prinze Jr.'s character who tackled him only to realize, oh crap, I got the wrong guy. Or was it Barry?
It was Barry.
That was Barry, okay.
Yeah. I get it that it's like, that's the thing. It could be anyone. We're in a fishing village and everyone wears these fishing outfits, but also who goes to a fucking 4th of July parade wearing that big giant like slicker? It's got to be really hot. He's not on the
fisherman's
boat.
Town, so yeah, you might have those guys.
I guess. I just didn't find that to be terribly intimidating.
Is it a hockey mask?
I guess that's a fair question. Not in and of itself, but it becomes terrifying because of the movies.
Also, that's one of the beginning ones. So I think now it's a thing to have that weird mask. Back then you had Leatherface and Michael Myers. I think it was all kind of starting back then. So there wasn't like a trope that you had to have it. But eventually it became a trope that, what is the mask? And Scream, of course, had a famous mask in it.
When you said that the hook is what was scary, it kind of made me think of the beginning of the movie when they're talking about the story of the hook hand, and it's foreshadowing in the movie, also kind of meta foreshadowing, because I think one of the next movies that came out after I Know What You Did Last Summer was Urban Legend, which was a movie that had a lot of these horror urban legends in it, and that was kind of the jumping off point. That was the premise of that movie. I think I did see that one, and it was pretty stupid too. But like, it just kind of struck me that, they're sort of setting the stage for the next horror movie here, even though I'm sure that wasn't their intention.
Well, I wonder if the original ending, once they bought this film, they're like, all right, we can film this, but you have to set up a sequel. Like, I feel like the last scene is just it's a jump scare setting up. If I remember correctly, I think it's actually the first scene of the sequel, which I did see as well, and I remember thinking it was horrible.
Really? That's interesting that you say that. I thought it was the opposite, and that in I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, they completely ignore that last scene.
You might be right. You might be right.
I might be wrong, too. I really don't know.
It's been 20 years since I saw it. There was something about, not really being very clear, but there was something about that ending scene either being completely ignored or they just said it was a dream, because the movie ends with like a bad guy jumping out of a mirror. Like, again, we're going to a weird science fiction realm. Or is there supposed to be a hidden wall behind the mirror at this like random New England university?
I think it had to be a dream. And then my general takeaway from this, and I think this is where we come to a different place here, I don't think they want you to think too much about it. I think with a lot of these things in the movie, if you take it for a 90-minute fun little ride, then a lot of the holes and issues that you guys are seeing, you don't really care.
I think you're right about that, Mike. And I can imagine the writer or director or editor or someone along the way saying, yeah, you know what? That is kind of a plot hole, but the people who are going to see this movie, it's teenagers who are going to be making out and no one's going to give a shit. And so when someone said, hey, how come we don't understand the villain's motivation and why he waited a year and how come there are all of these other questions, the answer was, shut up. No one cares.
Yeah, and this kind of comes back to what we were talking about earlier when we were talking about the Big Bang Theory. If you just take it for a doofy, fun comedy that keeps you entertained for 20 minutes or whatever while you're on the elliptical, you can have a little fun. If you're looking for highly intelligent written stuff, if you're looking for Parks and Rec, if you're looking for The Office, if you're looking for The Sopranos or Game of Thrones, this ain't it. It's just a fun little 90-minute ride. You can enjoy it for what it is, or you can choose not to.
That's a really good point, Mike. And you get a gold star for tying it all back and bringing it full circle. That was really good. I really like that. But let me ask you, Mike, do you think that the movie as a whole stands a test of time?
Okay. If we take it for what it is as a fun slasher film, sure, why not? If we consider whether this movie could work in 2023, the answer is clearly not, because to my earlier point that I raised to you, James, they could just call an Uber and nobody kills anybody on the road and the drunk drivers get home safely. Mm-hmm. I mean, sure, they made slasher movies before. They'll make slasher movies again. Are there going to be slasher movies with plot holes? Yes. Is everything going to add up and make sense? No. Do we care? Maybe you do, maybe I don't. For somebody who doesn't really care, sure, it stands the test of time. If you really do care and you're looking for high-minded pros, then no. But I'll say yes, because for these purposes, I didn't care.
Okay, so you're landing on yes.
Yes.
What do you think, Al? Does I Know What You Did Last Summer stand the test of time?
No, I don't think so. It has too many problems. And I mean, I guess the counter argument for it does stand the test of time is that they made the sequels and there was an Amazon series and all of that. It's based on a book from the 70s that is apparently very, very, very different and doesn't have any actual death in the book. I will say it's a great title, and I am a sucker. I know we've talked about this on the podcast before. I am a sucker for movie titles that are full sentences. This is a good one.
Can I interrupt you for one moment, Al? I know you do like those. So I went through all 380 titles. I possibly missed one. It's possible. But this would be the 15th movie that has a sentence. And some of these are stretching, because I think technically it's a sentence. But there's some that are clearly sentences. Can I know it's hard for you, Mike, because you didn't do 380 of these.
I listened to probably about 250.
You listened to many of them. Can you guys name 5 of them between the two of you? Al, can you think of one movie that's a sentence?
Well, the first one that always pops into my mind is Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. I think that is a brilliant fucking title, and I had a huge crush on Christina Applegate, so that's the first one that pops into my mind.
That and I Know What You Did Last Summer are the most well-formed sentences out of all of these. All right, so let me try a couple. First, a Rick Moranis film.
Oh, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Okay, good. When the three of us went to dinner before this podcast, Al, you talked about a hysterical sequel on the Paramount Network, Paramount streaming.
Oh, right. So Beavis and Butthead Do America?
Technically a sentence. Ben Stiller's breakout film.
Not Zoolander.
No,
Night
before that.
Night at the Museum.
No, way before that. There's a very famous scene with some male fluid and hair.
Oh, there's something about Mary.
Something about Mary. Okay, here's one. This is the weakest one on the list. John Travolta, one of his comeback films.
Look Who's Talking?
Yeah, Look Who's Talking. Technically, it's a sentence. I did not like this film. You did. It's a Mike Myers film.
Oh, So I Married an Axe Murder?
Uh-huh.
That would be a sentence fragment.
Okay, all right, okay. So that's a segment fragment. All right, next one. This one was a film that it could have been seen as way racist, but in a weird way wound up being a really interesting critique on racism in a very funny way.
The Gods Might Be Crazy, or The Gods Must Be Crazy?
Oh, I did not include that one. So yeah, that's another one. But no, this involves a road trip through New Jersey.
Harold and Kumar?
Go to White Castle.
Go to White Castle, that's
Okay,
right.
okay.
The next one is a unfair statement, but it says something about an entire race of people.
White Men Can't Jump.
That's right. Okay. Another, it's a question about a cartoon character.
Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Correct. The next one is a question about George Clooney.
Who Framed George Clooney?
No. Well, he is a criminal in this film.
Not
Ocean's
Batman
11?
No, it's a question. It starts with the word "oh."
Oh, brother, where art thou?
That's a sentence. That
Yeah.
is. This is number 11 on my list. That's your clue, and I swear it is number 11 on here. Turn it up to 11. Does that help?
This is Spinal Tap.
This is Spinal Tap.
Okay.
You loved all three of the trilogy. I did not like the third of the trilogy.
The Muppets Take Manhattan.
Correct.
Okay.
We have two left. This is a question film, and it stars Richard Dreyfuss.
Oh, what about Bob?
That's a question.
Uh-huh.
And then the final one is based on a book by a woman who graduated Cornell a year or two before us.
The Devil Wears Prada.
That's right.
Okay. Wow. That is a lot of movies with full sentences for their titles. I'm still always going to think of Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. But getting back to I Know What You Did Last Summer, some other just random things that don't stand the test of time. When Helen walks into her house and the killer sneaks in and he hides in her closet, the dad is watching a baseball game. It looks like a baseball game from the 70s. Did you notice that?
College World Series.
Oh, was that what it was?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I just realized something else, though.
What's that?
When the killer walks in the house, that would have shown up on a ring.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Not everyone has a ring, though.
In the
In
suburbs?
the suburbs? Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right.
Do your kids do booze for Halloween?
Yeah, although what's the point?
Well, that's the funny thing. Like, then you're watching the ring to try and figure out who it is. The kids try and get smart about it, though. I give them credit.
Sometimes, and sometimes they're just like, they wear a little mask and it's like, yeah, but you're a short blonde kid and like, we know who it is. It looks like Julie has a netbook. Remember netbooks? Like the little laptops that weren't quite laptops, but they were pretty small. And then I had a couple of those and they broke.
The Chromebooks of the 90s.
Yeah, exactly. I'm pretty sure she has a netbook.
Yes.
And when she's doing research on the person that they killed,
The Windows.
well, yeah, and she's like, I can access the local library online. And it's like, neat. I can do that too, or I can just do a stupid Google search. So some of that kind of stuff doesn't really stand the test of time. But overall, I just think this is a movie with a kind of big idea that could be really interesting if they explored it. You know, how these kids made a horrible mistake and the regret that they suffer and the trauma and how it affects them and what happens with the killer and how they're parallels in some way. They don't do any of that. Also, the fucking happy ending is total bullshit.
Agreed.
Right? That they're like, oh, well, now we don't need to be sad because it's fine. He wasn't really dead. I mean, you were kind of saying this too, James, but like the 1 year later when they're all happy, no, shouldn't she still be fucking traumatized that her two best friends were killed gruesomely?
And her best friend's sister was like, that whole family is wiped out now. I mean,
except for the dad watching the College World Series at home. Yeah, like it's fucking awful, but there's no trauma. It's fine.
The trouble I have though is she's accusing him of murder one minute, and then she's like cuddling up to him the next minute.
Yeah.
How are we supposed to buy that?
That's also true. Also, sorry, no offense, but they're pretty bad actors. Like, especially in that scene, the reconciliation of Freddie Prinze Jr. is like, no one gets me the way you do. And Jennifer Love Hewitt says, I understand your pain.
I had that exact 2 sentences written down. I usually don't pick up bad acting, and that was horrible writing. I don't know how Meryl Streep would deliver I understand your pain after that. I don't know.
You're right. It is horrible writing and horrible acting. I really can't stand Freddie Prinze Jr. or Ryan Felipe in general as actors. Sarah Michelle Gellar I like from Buffy. Jennifer Love Hewitt's fine, but not really an amazing actor. There's a lot to roll your eyes at in this movie. So I'm going to say that it does not stand the test of time. James, what do you think?
I pretty much agree with what you said, Al. I think I probably kind of liked it 20 years ago when I saw it. I remember thinking jump scares at the end of films are really lame and cheap, and I still think they're lame and cheap.
Fair.
Especially when, I can't even remember if it leads anywhere in the sequel. Probably doesn't. I don't think the guy jumps through a mirror. But I especially agree with what you said, Al. There's a lot in here. And a remake of this film, which I think should be remade. I think it's a perfectly fine premise. I think there's a lot you could do. Make the killer a little bit more interesting. Make it a little bit more intelligent and give these kids, like, not a complete out that they almost murdered someone at the end. Kevin Williamson had a real great cast at Dawson's Creek, and then even a great cast at Scream. I'm not as harsh as you are. I think it's a little weaker. This cast, it carries it enough. It's just not enough. It's not a good enough screenplay. I don't think it's a good enough movie. I don't find the motivation of the killer interesting. I don't find the characters, I'm not rooting for them. Their guilt wasn't enough. Yeah, for me, I did not need to see this film again. I have zero curiosity to know whether or not I Still Know What You Did Last Summer picks up from the last scene. So it does not stand the test of time.
Sorry, Mike, you're outvoted.
I had fun. Did you guys have fun?
I had fun hanging with you, Mike.
And that's why we do this.
Also because you brought us cookies. We'll put a picture on Instagram because you do make very delicious cookies. But that was an extra treat. The real treat was hanging out. So thank you for joining us. And this was your 4th movie, so you're going for a hoodie? Is that what you're looking for?
That's the goal.
Okay. All right. You have another one in mind?
Yes. Next one we're going to do together, Wizard of Oz, because I don't believe that somehow you guys have not done that one.
I feel like I pitched it once and you were kind of like, you weren't in the mood.
I just realized now why you guys haven't done it. And James, if you don't want to do it, I understand. Because you hate musicals.
No, I mean, I've liked some of the musicals we did. Haven't I liked most of them? I liked Moulin Rouge. What else have we done?
I don't know. I think that's a fair point. You've mentioned that you're not a huge musical fan.
Unless they're fantastic. And I do not need to see Moulin Rouge again, but that was a very visually appealing film, and it was good enough.
I couldn't get to that one.
I can see that. But you are correct. I generally am not the hugest fan of musicals.
Your
but
call. You want to do it? We'll do it. If not, we'll do something else.
Hey, yeah, let's do it. Maybe we'll even do we'll do one of the other Oz films that came out over the years.
I mean,
The Wiz?
Maybe The Wiz. I was going to say,
The Wiz.
The Wiz is the only one that's maybe worth talking about. I take back that maybe. The Wiz is worth talking about. I'd be down for that. But Mike, thank you again for joining us. Thank you for hanging out with us. Thank you for the cookie. This was a good time. And thank you for kicking off our Halloween Spooktober.
Always a great time with you guys. And hopefully we do it again before long.
Sounds good. But that's going to do it for us this week. Next week, we will be going back a decade into the 80s for a spooky movie that I've never seen, but I'm kind of excited to watch, The Fly, with Jeff Goldblum. James, have you ever seen that?
I have seen that. That is a classic. I've not seen that film in decades, but I saw it as a kid. Oh. And that's a scary film, if I remember correctly.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm really looking forward to watching it and to talking about it next week and continuing our trilogy of spooky movies. Until then, we want to hear from you guys. We are at Testing Time Pod on Facebook, X, Instagram, and Threads. You can send us an email, the testingtimepodcast@gmail.com. And we'll see you next time, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.